A wild and wonderful day to you. We are open for business inside the Tier 4 studio in Morgantown, West Virginia, and guess what day it is? It's Wednesday, which means it is time for our weekly walkthrough in preparation for the upcoming West Virginia University football game. For the Charleston Daily Mail, I am Mike Casazza, and you, I hope, are more excited than a high school junior on an official recruiting trip to Oklahoma State. Allegedly. I bring that up because that is the conversation I find myself in most often this week. What to think of Joe DeForest. He is, of course, the former defensive coordinator now in charge of special teams for the Mountaineers. And yesterday, Tuesday, he was implicated pretty heavily in the first part of Sports Illustrated's 5-part series that highlights, or maybe even lowlights, the rise of Oklahoma State's football program into a national power. Now, you would think that would be a good opportunity for the Cowboys to gain some exposure. It is instead delivering notoriety because the title of the project is called The Dirty Game. And what we saw yesterday was Joe DeForest being implicated as the person who was more or less in charge of a pay-for-play system. Not unlike if you think about the bounty program for the Saints. If you're not familiar with the topic, I'll frame it that way. It's not to injure people, but you're basically rewarded for making certain plays. A sack, a tackle for a loss, even on special teams, a punt return, a blindside block. Who knows? Something that is impactful you would get paid for. You have players who say it happened, who say that DeForest would go around after the game and say this is what you earned, here are what your stats are. And also there are players who say that DeForest was seen giving players money, was seen having players come into his house and then those players coming out with money, and was known to have players come to his house, mow the lawn, do some weed eating, but actually not do it and still get paid for it. Don't have to tell you the gravity of those allegations. It's a big deal, so much so that not only is this going to be investigated deeply at Oklahoma State, but West Virginia Athletic Director Oliver Luck says that his school has started its own internal evaluation into the matter and has contacted the NCAA. Let's not concern ourselves with the battle royal here about Joe DeForest and should he stay, should he go. Let's try to stay away from the fact versus fiction, the perception versus reality. We don't know yet, and we might not know more Friday, if that makes any sense, because, like I said, this is a 5-part series, and from what I understand, the 4th part will again name DeForest for his involvement in the Hostess program at Oklahoma State. Orange Pride is what it was called, and to put it in a PG manner, young women were picked to please recruits on their recruiting visits and encourage them to pick the Cowboys. So again, more details coming. We're not sure what it's going to be yet. We also don't know what were the motivations for the people who are giving the facts, giving the testimonials for this story. I think maybe the thing to really concern yourself with for West Virginia is not necessarily did DeForest do it back at Oklahoma State. It would be hard to pin that on WVU, but even beyond did it happen at West Virginia, because that would be a problem. What might happen now? What this means for West Virginia is you may hear the NCAA come a-calling again. If you remember back to when Rich Rodriguez had his NCAA dust-up at Michigan, that finally breached the borders back home at West Virginia. Because it happened when he was at Michigan, they wondered what happened when he was at West Virginia. And when the NCAA comes calling for a situation like that, you bear yourself full to their investigators, and that is what got West Virginia in trouble with Bill Stewart basically having the same practices in place that Rodriguez had before him, which he brought to Michigan. It was bad. They got in trouble. They were on probation. Probation's bad. It sucks. You don't want to do it. If you have to actually run the thing at a school, it is a pain in the neck. It's constant monitoring and reporting. But the good part of that is constant monitoring and reporting. The compliance people are around the operations all the time. They keep notes. They watch stuff. They probably tisk a lot of things. I would find it hard to believe that something like what DeForest is accused of at Oklahoma State happened here. If it did happen, you have to blow up the whole thing because you have a problem there. But you cross your fingers and you think, wow, probation might have been a good thing in this situation. At the very least, you can take some consolation in it. But more to come on that. Let's not worry about that now. Let's instead focus on Saturday and an opportunity to get right against a bad team. To be polite to Georgia State, they're coming. They're making $550,000, and that is about it. They are 38-point underdogs, and I don't really concern myself with can West Virginia cover 38, but can they actually score 38? You've seen some misfiring situations on offense, and West Virginia has sought to make some changes here. You have new receivers, or at least new starting receivers, Kevin White, Ronald Carswell outside, Mario Alford inside. Speed, playmaking ability. This is not going to be the slow, plodding group of receivers you saw in the first couple of games. Can they actually move the ball down the field and get in the end zone? Probably against this team more often in the future. Who knows? But you need to build somewhere, and I think what West Virginia's coaches have chosen to do is invest in the potential of these players and use this game as a springboard rather than rely on more of the same and hoping that it changes. We'll see how that goes because, like I said, Georgia State, not a very good team. In fact, Jeff Sagarin has his rankings, and he does the top 250 teams in the FBS and FCS. Georgia State is number 208. They are the worst of the FBS teams in the rankings. They are one spot above Gardner-Webb, which is the team that Marshall obliterated last weekend. Not to say that Georgia State is not without talent. If you'll remember, William & Mary had Trey McBride, a really good outside receiver who gave West Virginia some fits up the rail. 2 40-yard receptions, a other play for, I forget what it was, but they got 80 yards receiving in the game, something along those lines. A good player. Same situation at Georgia State. They have Albert Wilson, who is one of the leading players in several career FBS categories, including yards per catch, total yards, receiving yards per game, things like that. He's an accomplished player. He can play. He might have NFL ability, according to some people I've talked to. So, again, a test for West Virginia outside. You saw them have their issues playing a couple of passes against McBride. I thought they were really good, the cornerbacks against Oklahoma. Physical, played up close, didn't really let anything get by them. Can they keep that going and play really well against the one offensive threat that Georgia State has? Georgia State also has exploited themselves on offense, particularly their line. They only averaged 2.4 yards per rush. They basically fired their running back coach Monday, and their starting center and starting right guard have quit the team. That is a problem if you're going to face a West Virginia team that has some confidence now, especially up front. Their defensive line played great last game, really had some success unplugging some of Oklahoma's plans up front. You figure that's a matchup they want to exploit again and kind of keep some continuity rolling. Defensively, though, they had these 10 aims that they want to shoot for. They only got 5 of them. Tackles for loss, turnovers forced, things like that. They did a good job in, but they allowed too many yards rushing. The time of possession wasn't where they wanted. I think that they know they played well. I don't think they want to rest on that. They want to get better. Georgia State just doesn't have a lot of firepower. Not certain who's going to play quarterback. Again, it's kind of an overmatched opponent. So defensively, can they help West Virginia's offense? And they did last game. They got the turnovers. They made some things happen. But there has to be just a habit to get into there to get the ball back to the offense and give the offense more chance to do it. All things line up for West Virginia to at least get better here. You have the 3 quarterbacks. One will start. The other 2 will play. You're probably going to see a lot of receivers incorporated. Maybe some more things worked on in the running game, trying to get those running backs who haven't had a lot of carries, some carries, and then you go forward from there because that Maryland game in 2 weeks is looking tricky. So if all goes well for West Virginia, they exploit some things that they think are going to be good. They make some use of their changes on offense. They find a quarterback maybe because, this will be my closing point here, something is going to have to click with this offense first. 31 points in 2 games, not good enough. I think that goes without saying. There is a lot of potential here, but what clicks first? What has to click first? Does the quarterback have to fall in place and then the wide receivers and the running backs fall around him? Or do the receivers and running backs click and then the quarterback falls into place behind him? Kind of chicken and the egg. But maybe we'll see it crack on Saturday, noon, Mountaineer Field, a Root Sports broadcast with Rob King and also friend of the program, Rasheed Marshall. Congratulations. Good luck to him. For the Charleston Daily Mail, I am Mike Casazza. You can catch me tomorrow night for SMC Radio on Scoop and Score. My guests are Westcott Eberts from the Burnt Orange Nation. We'll talk about the mess at Texas this week, and also Gina Mizell from the Oklahoman talking about, well, I guess, the mess at Oklahoma State as well. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you, and I'll see you next time.